Move forward. Join me in the front. I don't feel like walking around with this. Okay. Now can you hear me clearly in the back? Those of you who are too obstinate to move forward. Yes? Kim, you in particular? No. Okay. Okay, everyone. I am here to present to you on Microsoft Windows Vista. And as you can see, I am running this from a Mac. So it's a little different. I am running Vista on the Mac, though. So one of the things I want to lead off with, you'll hear a lot about, Vista takes a huge amount of resources for a computer to run it effectively. Well, yes and no. I'm running it on the Mac. I'm not running it as just installed on the Mac. I'm actually running it in a virtual session on the Mac. So I'm running 2 operating systems right now, and it runs fine. So it is kind of a matter of how Vista is installed and set up as to whether or not it'll work very well on your computer. We do a lot of support at the Mansfield Library for people's personal computers when they come in and need to use our wireless system and whatnot. And I would tell you probably 90% of the machines that we do support on there that are running Vista are terrible. They're the slowest machines I've ever worked on. They're really clunky. They don't seem to respond quickly. So it is very much a matter of how things are done. So hopefully some of the things I'll be able to show you here, if you're running Vista, will help you out. How many of you out there have Vista machines at your library? Or at home, I guess. So just a handful. How many of you are going to be moving 2 machines with Vista on them in the, I guess, near future? A few? How many of you are just looking forward to that with great joy? No one. Okay. Well, hopefully we can change some of that. So, probably the most obvious difference you're going to see when you go to Vista is this thing called user access control. It's probably the bit you've heard a lot about. Basically, anytime you try to do something on the computer, it jumps up and asks you, are you really sure you want to do this? I mean, not like browsing the web or whatever, but every time you try to install something, every time you change a driver, it kind of comes up and prompts you. Is this something you really want to be going with? So why did they do this? Well, one of the comments in Mark's presentation just a moment ago was about computer security and how come we have to run so much on our computers to make them secure so that they keep working. Well, one of the things Microsoft did is put in this thing called user access control. So anytime you try to do something that could cause a problem with your computer, or that they think might cause a problem with your computer, they ask you, are you really sure you want to go ahead and do this? There's some good things and bad things about that. Good thing is it does prevent some things from getting installed. The bad thing is, probably like most people, you get inundated with that. You start to ignore it, and you just go ahead and click through the allow anyway. In which case, it hasn't really done anything for you. Every time that the user access control starts up, one of the things that it does is it takes a snapshot of your screen, freezes it, brings a box up in the foreground, grays out the background, and asks you, do you want to go forward? So every time you do that, it really is kind of a process on the machine. So can you just turn it off? You can. I'm not going to recommend it because then one of the things you're doing is disabling one of the kind of newer features of Vista that is going to help you keep the machines cleaner, especially if you have machines out in the public realm, where, they shouldn't be installing things anyway, but if they do, this is something that might prompt for it a little bit. And I will say, though, when you're setting up a new computer for use in your library, a new computer for your staff machine, you have to install all the applications that you use and things like that. It's pretty nice to have it turned off so you don't have to click through 5 different windows for every single install. And that is something that we do here. Now, the other thing I do recommend, though, doing other ways to make it less intrusive so that it doesn't really jump out into your face and nag you all the time. And there are. So you can temporarily disable it, and you can see on this screen here, if I can figure out how to use the pointer on this one. Or maybe I can't because that was on Mark's little toy. Jeez. Okay, so where I highlighted on this box, if you go into the user accounts area under control panel in Vista, there's a little thing there highlighted where it says turn user account control on or off. If you click on that, you can just disable user account control. It's not going to ask you again. It's not going to nag you. What it is going to do, though, is every time you turn on the computer, and as you're running the computer, it has a little nagging box down by the clock with a balloon that pops up and says, you know, your computer has user account control disabled. Are you sure you want to do this? So, you know, it kind of is annoying. There's ways to turn it off that don't nag you that way. So this is something, you know, when you're setting up a new machine, you go ahead and click that. You go through and do your installs of all your software, and then you can just turn it back on. So what can you do to make it less intrusive? Well, the one thing you can do that I really recommend doing, and I do on our Vista installs, is I turn off the secure desktop setting. So what that does is it still pops up the little window asking you, are you sure you want to do this? But it doesn't take the snapshot of your screen. It just brings it up on your current window. It actually makes the user account thing seem to be a lot less intrusive. It just pops up quickly like most pop-up windows. You click on it and it disappears. Your computer doesn't fade in and out of this of a dark screen and light screen, dark screen and light screen. It does make the system respond faster, and it seems to take quite a bit of the system impact of the user account control out of the system. So how do you do that? Well, you go ahead and click on the Windows button. Now the Windows button in Vista by default has replaced the Start button. So for years, as we've been trained to click on Start to stop our computers and things like that, now that is the Windows button. So that's where your menu is located. Same location, doesn't really look like a menu button anymore. It's just a circle down there. So if you click on the Windows button, there is at the bottom of the screen that comes up a search box. If you enter in a search term, like I've typed here, called seccpol.msc, that's going to open up the window displayed here. Now that is, when it does that, it's going to prompt you with the user account control for allowing this, because it is opening up the security policy application for your computer. If you scroll down, well, on the left-hand side, you click on local policies, and then you click on security options. On the right-hand window here, you go scroll all the way down till you get to the user account control switch to secure desktop option. It's highlighted here on the screen. And if you get to that section and set it to disabled, it should take effect immediately, and it's no longer going to prompt you every time you click the user access control for that dark screen and light screen. It just is going to do a pop-up box rather quickly. So what's the other big thing with Vista that comes up with us a lot is that Microsoft, in its infinite wisdom, has decided that when you go and click on the little power button in the start menu that looks like a power button to shut off your computer, it's not going to shut it off. It's determined that, much like a Mac, it's going to sleep the machine rather than actually power it down. The advantage of this, and probably the big reason that Microsoft did it, is it's actually much quicker. You click power, it just makes the machine appear to shut off, and it's really not. It's just all the operating system and whatnot is written to memory, and then the screen goes dark. And then if you leave it for a long enough period of time, sometimes, depending on the power plan settings and whatnot, it will write your data off to hard drive. But for the most part, it just keeps it in memory, sort of shut down. It's running very little energy to do this, so it's nearly as good for energy conservation purposes to be shut off. But the downside is that it really doesn't shut the machine off. So if you have little problem that's going on, or you have a program that has a little memory leak or something like that, it doesn't clean any of that up. We run into this an awful lot with people with wireless access. Their Vista machines will work for a week or 2 or 3, and then they just stop working. The wireless no longer functions in our system. And the reason being, they've never shut the computer off. It's always just kind of gone to sleep. And somewhere along the line, some of the routing tables in there or some of the other information the computer uses to connect to the network has gotten scrambled. It won't get replaced because there's no reboot, and it's gone. So one of the things that we definitely do is change that power button so it actually shuts the computer off rather than just setting it to sleep. And you need to go about doing this, once again, through the control panel. If you go into the control panel, system and maintenance, and then into the power options, you're going to be brought into an area that you can choose your power plan that you're running on. Now, most computers by default, especially ones that are plugged in, desktop machines and whatnot, are going to run what's called the balanced power plan. So if you go on that and you click on the change plan settings, the plan you're using, you want to go into the advanced power section. And then up in the upper right, you can see some of the basic things. It's just going to be how often it turns off your display and when it puts the computer to sleep automatically. And the advanced settings bring up another dialog box that you're going to go and scroll down through. And you get to the section where it says power buttons and lid option. Under there, you can choose the power button, the physical power button on the computer, and you can choose the start menu power button. You can choose the action you want them to be. I always change them both to shut down rather than to stand by or sleep, which are the default options.
Does the physical power button also send it to sleep? Or
you know, on my computer, yes, it was set to sleep. It was not set to shut down. But that seems to, I've seen them both ways on that. So
that could explain some of the wireless problems.
yeah, the power, especially on laptops, the power button seems to sleep them. So don't turn it off yet. It should be on your handout in there, isn't it? You can't read it. Okay. The presentation I'll put up online as well. So if you don't want to take copious notes of little things that you can't read on your handout, you can go ahead and look at it online later. Now, I should have mentioned at the start, if you have any questions, comments, disagreements, speak up in line here and we'll just answer them as they go. I'll show you at the end of the presentation. If I told you now, you'd probably just leave. Okay. Another thing that's changed in Vista is the start menu. It does look quite a bit different. It's similar to XP's default one with 2 panes, but it is even quite a bit different from that. You don't have to keep it. You can go back to the old way of doing things, the standard way you've been used to forever. I don't think it changes the Windows button to say start. That stays as the Windows button. But other than that, it does stay. So to do that, if you right-click on the Windows button and click on the properties, select the classic start menu, click OK, and then you're back to a standard start menu and standard desktop like you've been used to from Windows since Windows 95, I guess. They have pretty much ran the same thing. So that is still available for you. And you can also customize that start menu by clicking on the Customize button. Now that's something, rather than going to the standard start menu, I go to the Customize start menu and are able to remove some of the things off of the Vista default that I never use. So some of those things that I do, and this might be pretty small on your handout, I guess. I haven't looked at the handouts to see how they came out. So one of the things you can do, you can select what displays on the start menu. You can select how many items and what types of things display. So you can select how they display. So you can open it as a link. You can open it as a separate window, a menu. So there's a lot of different options you can do to customize the Vista OS so that it is something set up more how you'd like to use it. And there's some things you can get rid of that you may not often use. And the ones that I don't use, the Connect to and default programs, I never use off the start menu. Favorites, I rarely use IE, so I don't have anything in my favorites for one thing. And another, when I want favorites, I don't go to my start menu for it. I'm in my browser already. Help, the Windows Help menu is actually very, very good and very powerful. There's a lot of great information in there, but I never use it in that manner. 9 times out of 10, I use Google, or if it's not that, I'll just in the search box, I'll enter in what I am looking for there. That searches the help as well, so why have a separate option for it? The network option, I generally don't ever use out of the start menu, and I also sometimes just disable the large icons. It just makes the menu a little smaller, so when you open it, it doesn't take up so much screen real estate. Now that depends on your eyes and the size of your screen and things like that too. But it's customizable. You can do it however it works for you. So some other things on menus. One of the things in Vista, and I don't know if how many of you here have gone to Office 2007 or Internet Explorer 7? So about half. Now how many of you noticed that the menus that you're used to for so long aren't there? The File menu, the Edit, View, Copy, Tools. They got rid of all of them. But they actually didn't get rid of them. In an application, if you just press on the Alt button, those menus suddenly appear for you. They're all back. And the other thing is, now you can turn them on by default in Vista as well. So the Vista Explorer menu, which is kind of this Windows Explorer that you've used forever for files and dragging and dropping and whatnot, it no longer has the File, Edit, View menu, but you can turn it on by default. And this will hold through to it seems to hold through to some applications. So if you turn it on in Vista, it seems to turn it on in Office 2007 as well. It does not turn it on in Internet Explorer. You have to do that separately. So that's a little different. So like I mentioned, per application, you can just press the Alt key. And for Vista itself, once again, if you go into the Windows menu and you go to the computer icon or menu option, and the computer menu replaces what used to be My Computer. You open that, it opens up like a Windows Explorer view. You click on Organize and Folder and Search options, and then the View tab, select Always Show Menus, and you're going to have them always. So that's kind of the way you do it there. Now IE7 and the Office 2007, you can turn these on separately if you're still running XP. And for IE, you notice that I've turned it on here. I've circled it in the little red there circle. To do that, if you just click on Tools and select the menu bar option, the menu bar is going to come back for you. The same type of thing you can do within Office 2007. It's out of the Windows bar, if I remember correct, and then you go into there's a Toolbars option that you can choose. Or if you just press the Alt menu button, it shows up anyway. So this is something I didn't know really until I started working through this presentation, because we switched to Office 2007 about 6 months ago. And it's been something that we've always been looking for since, because you're so trained for so long to look for certain functions in certain places, and they're no longer there. And the other thing I want to mention, and this is something that in our public computers doesn't work so well, but all our staff machines does, is that the menus, then whatever menu options there are, a lot of those things are replicated by the mouse in the right-click menu. And this is a context-sensitive menu, so that if you've highlighted a block of text on a page and you right-click on it, there's a lot of options that come up that are just going to be applicable for only that function that or what you're trying to do. What can you do to that selected text? The right-click menu is going to bring that up. And that's something that I see time and again. A lot of our users don't recognize that it is available. They're looking for a way to do something when 9 times out of 10, if they right-click on it, the option's going to be right there. So, speeding Vista up. Now, in my little other script there, this is really why you're here, isn't it? So, you've got a new Vista machine, and it just seems like a dog compared to the machines that you've been using in the past. That may be the case. It may just seem that way. One of the things with Vista is that it does require a lot more systems resources, and it's debatable whether or not you've gained a lot because of that, but it's the way it is. So one of the things you can do is use a feature called ReadyBoost. And what ReadyBoost does is it uses a thumb drive or USB flash drive or an iPod or whatever you have, to create some temporary memory for your computer. And this actually can make quite a big difference on the speed of the computer you're working on. Now, if it's something where it's your personal machine in your office, this might not be the best way to go. But if you're doing something on lab machines or anything like that, it's a way to create a temporary increase in speed. So to do that, if you insert your thumb drive, the new menu that pops up, the very last thing that in the menu is a little icon that says Speed Up My System. So if you click on the Speed Up My System icon on the ReadyBoost menu, it's going to bring up another little window, and then it's going to ask you how much space you would like to allocate for speeding up your computer. And the one thing to be aware of here is that this creates like a file on your thumb drive specifically to be used for speeding up your computer. So that whatever space you set up in your thumb drive for ReadyBoost is not going to be available for other file storage. So you have to kind of decide, I guess, if you're using this, how big a chunk you want to use. Now, if you're doing something with thumb drives now, it seems, I know at the library we're selling 2 gig thumb drives for like $20. So it's not a big expense, it seems, anymore. Thumb drives used to be pretty expensive for much size at all, whereas anymore, it's a pretty cheap investment.
So if this is the case, why doesn't Vista just come with a thumb drive when you buy it?
Okay, that's a good question. Why doesn't Vista just come with a thumb drive? Well, because it's not as good as having extra memory in your computer. It's better than not having it there at all, but you're better off buying more memory for your machine. So there's 3 levels of memory storage within Vista, or any computer for that matter. That there's the RAM that you're using, that your computer may have 1 gig of RAM or 2 gigs or 512 megs, or if you're really using an old one, 64K or something. But I hope you're not using an old one like that. So if you have a really old, or a newer machine, say, you're probably going to have a gig of RAM. That's kind of the standard that Vista is saying that it requires. But it will run on 512. It won't run on 512. Don't kid yourself. If you don't have a gig of RAM, don't put Vista on it. Now, the next level of storage is called, in Windows, the paging file. And what that is a temporary space on your hard drive that it uses to swap information in and out of. So when you open Microsoft Word, it loads the whole program into memory, and you're good to go. Now you open up Internet Explorer. Well, there's not enough room left in your memory, so it takes some of the space that it's used for Word and writes it out to the paging file, which is on your hard drive, and loads Internet Explorer all into memory. And so you're using that, and you're working fine. And then, oh, wait a minute, you want to switch back to Word. So when you switch back to Word, it swaps the process. Some of what Internet Explorer is using goes to the page file, and what's in the page file for Word is loaded into memory. So it's kind of a slower process that way. ReadyBoost is in between. So if you put in your thumb drive for ReadyBoost, it will allow you to use that as a temporary swap space instead of the paging file. So it's faster than the hard disk, but it's slower than RAM. So that's why it's a temporary improvement for a machine. So if you want to make a machine quicker that's not yours, that you're just sitting down at, ReadyBoost is a good way to do it. If you want to make a machine quicker that is your desktop machine, spend the $30 for an extra gig of RAM from Newegg and install it. You'll be much better off that way. Answer your question?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is page file the same as virtual memory in XP then?
Yes. Yeah, it's actually a page file in XP too. They call it both. The tab says, I think, virtual memory. I cover it later, but it's called the paging file because it's one file on your hard disk spread, and well, we'll cover it in a bit. So kind of more on ReadyBoost. If you want to change your ReadyBoost settings later on your thumb drive, then you go ahead, open the computer icon from the Windows menu again, and you right-click on the icon that represents your flash drive, and then you have a ReadyBoost tab on the Properties page that wasn't there in XP. It's a new option. And in that, you can go ahead and disable the device so it's no longer used for Ready Boost, or you can change the space required for it, do whatever. One thing that I do note, Ready Boost on a thumb drive can only be used on one computer at a time. So if you have your thumb drive and you're using it at Ready Boost on your work computer and then you go to a different computer, you can't use that space on the new computer. It's locked up by the first computer. So you need to disable it on one before moving to another. Just a little gotcha. And once again, it's also not available for regular storage.
So like if you were going to take something home on your thumb drive, you have to configure space on it for both machines?
No. Ready Boost is not an area where you can transfer files from one machine to another. It's used by the computer itself, you're not interfacing with it. If you want to use your thumb drive to take files back and forth to work, and if you set up a gigabyte of space on your thumb drive as Ready Boost, and it's a 2 gigabyte drive, the remaining 1 gigabyte is good for whatever you want. You can use it to transfer files from home to work. You can use it for Ready Boost on another machine. You can use it for whatever. So the whatever space you set as Ready Boost is only good for that computer on Ready Boost.
My question is, though, that if you wanted it on both machines, you'd have to do it twice.
If you want to use Ready Boost on 2 machines, yes, you have to set up separate Ready Boost sessions or files. So, Audra, did you?
No, I was just going to try to clarify what really is.
Okay. So, another thing with Vista, I'm just calling this slide less is more. Vista enables a ton of things because that it's assuming you may sometime want in the future. And so by doing that, it's actually slowing down your machine because it's running a lot of services and features that you probably will never use. And if you do use them, you probably know what the service is, and then you could go turn it on. So what I do recommend is turning off a lot of these services that are just taking up space and resources on the computer because you're not going to need them. I listed a set of services that I personally don't use in the library, and I doubt that you would use in the library. But that is something that you might want to look through. There's a link at the bottom of the page, and that gives exhaustive detail on what every service in Vista does. I'm not going to describe what all these do. Some of them are pretty obvious. I mean, Bluetooth support. If you're using a wireless Bluetooth mouse or keyboard, you're going to want the Bluetooth support service. If you don't use Bluetooth for anything, don't run it. It's not gaining you anything. It's just taking up resources. The same with the IP helper. It's for the next generation IP networks. I don't know anyone in Montana on a next generation IP network. It's not going to be an issue. And there's a lot of other options in there that I just recommend going through, disabling probably the ones that I've listed out here, and then you can go through the link and see if there's other ones that make a difference for you. So how do you go about disabling a service? Well, you choose the one you want, if it's Bluetooth or what have you. Going back to right-clicking on the computer option in the Windows menu, notice that's a really popular theme here. You can get to a lot of areas from that. And one thing in Vista, there's 1,000 different ways to get to the same area. This is the way that I like to do it. If you don't like this way, you can Google up another. It's going to give you a completely different pathway. So if you right-click on the computer option, you select Manage, then the UAC is going to prompt you again, and then go to the Services and Applications section, and then click on Services. And that's it's always at the bottom, and I've highlighted it. The computer management window that you're opening up here, there's a lot of information in there that I recommend you kind of browsing through and seeing what's available. But once you do that, if you double click on the service in the list that you wish to disable, you can change the startup type to disabled because that's going to prevent it from just starting again the next time you restart your computer. And then you go ahead and click on stop, and then you'll see a little green progress bar. It stops some services, and you click OK. If another service relies on the service that you're stopping, it's going to tell you that and say, is it OK to stop this service as well? Generally, yes. So I mentioned this slide a little bit earlier, I guess, but Vista does like a lot of RAM in the computer. ReadyBoost is a temporary workaround, but you're going to want at least 1 gigabyte of RAM to make the system run. The way I've got this Mac set up now is I have 2 gigs of RAM, 1 gig is dedicated to Vista, and 1 gig is dedicated to the Mac. And it runs just fine. If I'm running big applications on both sides, it's a little slows down a little. But if I'm running Vista or Mac, it's just as good as if I'm running it natively. And a large hard drive is a pretty good idea too. Vista requires and wants at least 15 gigs of space just to do an install. It different from Windows in the past, it throws everything on at once, piles it on your hard drive, and then whenever you want to add something that's part of Vista later, it's not going to ask you for the disk again. It's all there. And that 15 gig grows because every time Windows does an update or anything like that, it's all getting added to that space. So if you're in an area where some people like to put a different partition for their operating system versus their files, you're going to need a pretty good chunk for your operating system because it is going to keep growing over time. And the other thing, another feature of Vista is a thing called shadow copies. Shadow copies are a way to have a snapshot of your system, I guess. So when you make a modification of a file, it creates a copy of that file, and you can restore back to it. And I'll go over this in detail a little later. But needless to say, file changes that are being stored take up some space. So you're going to need, like I said, kind of a bigger hard drive. And then the other thing is the speed of the hard drive you don't think about a whole lot, but when you're buying your computers and you can choose different RPM speeds, if there's one at 5,000 RPM, there's one at 7,200 RPM, the faster it spins means the faster generally it's able to access and read and write data. So that's going to be a performance increase for you. So I do recommend getting the faster hard drive if it's a choice.
I don't need to be facetious or rude.
Yep.
What's the upside? Why do I want to go to Vista? We don't have it in our library now. What would be my incentive?
You don't have a choice at some point.
Can I just wait? Because I know by the time they stop supporting what we're using now, they're going to have yet another one. Can I just hope
Right.
that that's going to be better than this?
You can hope it's going to be better than this, yes. This XP is, in theory, the last I heard, was going to stop being supported in, I think, June. Windows, is it 7? I think it's called Windows 7.0 now. I have heard it's about a year out. So, Vista has not been an unqualified success for Microsoft by any means. But it is, when you buy a new computer, if you go buy a new computer, by and large, it's what comes.
But then my son, we got him one when he started his freshman year in college. And we ended up buying him, we ended up taking Vista off.
Right.
And going back to Vista.
Going back, yeah. And I know a lot of people have. And said, by and large, we don't run Vista in our library. There's not a huge, compelling reason for us to change to it. There are some nice feature improvements, definitely. And there's some nice whiz-bang interface. And the shadow copies are a really nice feature. It's much better than what XP did. But, yeah?
When you're purchasing a hard drive, not only the speed, but the largest cache they have to offer on it as well.
Absolutely. In the back. I can't see you. I'm not going to be able to hear you, so.
I would just say that I don't really like Vista either, but I think it's really helpful because I don't have a machine with Vista right now, but we have to deal with the public machines, and a lot of them with new laptops have Vista, and it helps us do tech support a whole lot better if we know it. So I hope Microsoft comes up with something better too, but in the meantime, I have to deal with Vista.
That's true. The majority of, every Christmas, students get new laptops for Christmas. They come in. I don't see new laptops coming in with XP on them anymore. I see quite an increase in Macs, but I don't see many anything but Vista. That is the primary operating system now. And yes, hopefully Microsoft has learned a lot from this rollout and is going to change with 7.1, or 7.0. I doubt it. The reality is they're not going to change much because Vista, I think, was released a little premature for the hardware level, but hardware has increased, costs have come down on memory and storage. It's made Vista's memory and storage requirements less of an issue than they were. And, you know, at some point, Microsoft has done a very good job of supporting things throughout its history. I mean, if you owned a piece of software that worked on Windows 3.1, it probably works on Vista. And you can't say that about other operating systems. They do have a lot of backwards compatibility, which creates a lot of overhead for them. So, I mean, there's good and there's bad. So, the page file or virtual memory, like we were talking about before, they are set up by default in Vista and in all flavors of Windows for automatic sizing. It's not something that you're going to have to go in there and set. But if you do go in there and set it as a static page file, it does perform a fair amount better than it does if you have an automatic sizing one. I'm not sure exactly why this is the case, but if you do back-to-back tests on the same machine, you'll find that a static page file does make quite a good improvement. So, but if you set a static one, what size? Well, Windows has a recommended maximum size. I generally set it to twice that size, and yeah, that seems to be the best performance option. So how do you go about doing that? So you can go into the control panel option, which is similar on Vista from the previous versions of Windows. System and maintenance, and you go to the System tab. From the System tab, on the left-hand side, there's an Advanced System Settings option. If you go there, it brings up a System Properties window. This is very similar to the window you would have gotten if you right-clicked on the computer icon and go to Properties of it. Kind of the same place. The Advanced tab, and then you go into Performance. Under there, you can click the Change on the settings under the Virtual Memory section. So this is where paging file and virtual memory kind of get the terms cross over. And if you uncheck the Automatically Manage option, you can, it'll give you some default sizes. It gives you initial size and a maximum size. I set these to the same, so it creates one big file on your hard drive that you're going to be operating from. And then, like I said, I set it to twice, and then click OK. The system grinds away, does its thing, and you're done. I do believe you have to reboot. I mean, it's Windows. You reboot for pretty much every system change anyway, so that's no difference. Some other things that really seem to improve the performance of Vista is there's 3 hotfixes that were released by Microsoft, and they make a big difference in some of the things I've seen working on machines. One of the things I see when you're copying files or deleting files, I've clicked on delete or copy, and it takes forever for the machine to seem to respond. It just kind of sits there and chugs away, and I don't know, is counting pixies in the background. So what I've done is did a little research and found there's a couple hotfixes that are included in the disk that is in your folder there. If you apply these, they do seem to fix a lot of those kind of odd performance traits of Vista. Now, they are not released in Windows Update. So if you go to your Tools Windows Update, or if you're automatically updating, these aren't applied to your computer because they're recommended, not high priority or what have you. They're also bundled in Service Pack 1, which, as of when I wrote this, wasn't available, and I still don't think it is. It's still in pre-release at this point in time. When that comes out, it'll fix a lot of these issues that right now you have to do one by one. Defragments. when Windows NT came along, and then it became Windows XP, and now it's Windows Vista, one of the first things they said is, we don't need to defragment the drive anymore. Windows just takes care of it. It wasn't too long after that where it was determined that that's not really true. You still do need to defragment the drive. And Vista is a little different from XP and NT in that it will do this automatically for you. It's an automatic service set up to run on a schedule, and it's supposed to run only if your computer is not busy. When your computer is not busy, the defrag process starts running if it's after the scheduled time that it's supposed to run. And it does a pretty good job of this. You can't really see what it's doing or how well it's done. There's no feedback to you, but it does, it does run along. You can change the time that it's going to run or see when it was last run by going into the control panel, system maintenance, admin tools. Under that administrative tools menu, you'll see that there's a little option here that's defragment your hard drive. If you click on that, it brings up the defragment window, and it does show you when it ran last. But that's really all it tells you. It doesn't say how good a job it did, how many fragments it cleaned up, or anything like that. So the other thing it won't do is defragment your paging file or your virtual memory. So if you've created virtual memory as a single file like I showed earlier, it should be in one location across your hard drive if you created it on a defragmented hard drive. If it was created on a fragmented hard drive, it's going to have some memory over here and some over here and some over here. And obviously that's going to be a little slower to read from because it's got to be skipping around. So the way to fix that is to defragment the hard drive on the computer or shortly after it's been defragmented. Delete your paging file by going to the paging file settings like I showed you earlier and recreating. That will create the page file in one contiguous piece that does make for a small performance gain. And another way you can do it is you can run commercial defragment software. There's one called Disk Keeper that definitely defragments the page file and moves it to the one place on your hard drive, but you got to pay for it. And oddly enough, under NT, I think it was NT, Disk Keeper was the software that was free and came with the operating system. They licensed it from the company that makes it. Another option, if you kind of want to see what it's doing and how it's defragmenting, I included a program on your hard disk that is open source called OzLogic defrag, and it shows you a little picture menu very similar to what the old defrag used to be. It'll tell you how often or how many files it cleaned up. It shows you little green boxes and how things are arranged on your hard drive. It just kind of gives you a little visual bit. So, some other things you can do with Vista. Vista, as I mentioned earlier, it starts a lot of services. It also adds a lot of applications or features that you may or may not want. These can be turned on or off on the computer. And to do that, it's something that it's pretty easy to do. You go into where you would add and remove your regular programs. But there's one thing I do recommend you leaving, even though you would think you would never want it, and that is the tablet PC optional features. A tablet PC is a laptop that you can write on the screen or use the screen to navigate with. Now, why would you want that on a desktop or anything else? Really, you don't. It's useless. But it includes the snipping tool, and the snipping tool is a really nice screenshot application that allows you to set a screenshot by drawing a box on your screen. It takes a picture of it. Then you can do the highlighting and circling it with red ink and stuff like that. That's actually what all the screenshots in here I've used to gather with and, and mark them up, is that screenshot app. So that's kind of a nice little addition that does come in bundled with the tablet PC features. So to go in there and turn things on and off, if you go to the control panel to the programs and features option, the uninstall a program section, on the left-hand side in the little menu, there is turn Windows features on or off. It brings up this window that is on the screen. The things that are checked are installed on your computer. The things that are unchecked aren't. If you wondered where your copy of Solitaire was, it's not there by default anymore. You have to check the games feature, and that installs it. So, I mean, those are just, that's an area that you can see those features. So, another thing. Vista is a system that is quite a bit more powerful in the sense of how it allocates processor or memory space to your applications. So there's a thing you can do called is setting your application priority. Why would you want to do this? Well, I remember mentioning the paging file earlier. If you're switching between applications, how it swaps things out and moves stuff around on the computer. Well, if you're running an application that you really want to have a lot of priority, if you're doing, you know, Photoshop and you're doing some high-end graphic work there, and you find that it's kind of dragging down because you have some other things running on the computer too, by default, every application on the computer runs at the same priority level. Well, you can set Photoshop to run at a little higher priority so that it's just given a little nudge in when it comes time to allocate memory or CPU resources to it. Yeah?
So is Microsoft still hammer back to normal when you reboot?
Yes. There are ways around it.
I know.
But yes.
Fix that in the new operating system.
No, they have not. Every time you even close the application, it's always, everything that starts as normal, unless you do a bit of there's some hacks that you can make it so that it moves forward, but
There's third-party software to do it too.
yeah, but not default. So how to do that? Well, you go into Task Manager. Task Manager is available by right-clicking on the taskbar at the bottom of your screen by default. And once you get into there, you can find the application you want to boost in the list displayed. And this is a difference in that if you're in the applications picture, not the processes list, you can click on the application, right-click on it, and choose Go to Process. It switches you over to the process list and gives you, if it highlights it for you in there, rather than looking in the process list yourself. Not much difference, but if something's named kind of arcanely, it helps. So if you right-click on the process in the process list, choose Set Priority, you can go ahead and set the priority that you wish. There are, I think, 3 steps. Yeah, you can go to real-time, high, above normal, normal, below normal, or low. Real-time, don't use it. Good way to give your application greater priority than the operating system itself. Good way to bring everything to a screaming halt. So you don't want to go there. You know, I mentioned moving things at a higher priority. You know, you can move things at a low priority too. If you were doing something on your computer, like ripping the content of a bunch of CDs at work, which you shouldn't do, but if you were doing that, you know, you could set that to a low priority, so it's just kind of chugging along doing its own thing and not impacting your real work of browsing Facebook for the, you know, what has been said about your library. So, you know, there's ways to kind of to work with the system so it works best for you. You don't always have to speed things up. So, kind of related to that, a lot of machines now, most machines that you buy are going to be coming with multi-core processors. Multi-core processors, the system sees as multiple processors. So you can assign an application to a specific processor. So kind of going back to the Photoshop example, you could say, Photoshop, I want to give you a really high priority, but only on this processor core, and let the system be running and doing things across the other processor core, so that it allows you to split applications out and could see some performance gains that way. Do I expect people to be doing this too often? Probably not. But if you are doing a really big, heavy application, that's where kind of tweaking with these things can come in nicely. So affinity, which I just said, same way as doing the priority, just choose the affinity menu option rather than the priority menu option. So search indexing. This is another improvement in Vista. is the search. So if you've used Vista and you've typed something in the search box, you've noticed that it probably returns results quite a bit faster than the old Windows search. When you searched in Windows before, it did a pretty poor job. It took quite a while. It hashed away on your disk. Now in Vista, it is setting up, it does an index of certain areas of your computer so that when you do a search, it does a much better job of actually returning relevant results. So now you can change this. If you don't like to search, you can turn it off. Or if you don't like the way it's searching, or if you don't like it to search certain documents, all of that is configurable. So one of the things I do recommend is on a public computer, are they going to be searching on the computer itself for something? Probably not. They shouldn't be. So I go ahead and would disable it there because there's no reason for, there's no advantage to having it. It's just going to take a little bit of system resources and a little bit of speed off the system in order to do that. Now, so what is an option there? How do you go about doing it? You go into the control panel, system and maintenance options again, and then they call it the indexing options. You're librarians, you know what indexing is. So you go in there and you can tweak the settings to best fit how you want your computer to be performing searching. Be it shutting it off, be it excluding certain types of files or certain areas on the system. All of that is available for you. And if you want to stop it entirely, the services tab that we talked about earlier, there is a Windows search service. Just disable it. It's no longer running. You don't have to mess with changing settings. Just turn it off. And like I mentioned before, I would probably not do this on a staff computer, but on a public computer I would disable the service. One case where I would probably disable it locally, I don't know how many people use the Google Desktop Search service, if installed that little feature, but if you're using that, why run Windows 2? They're going to do the same thing. And you probably are using the Google one because you like it, or you feel that it works well for you. Okay, shadow copies. I talked about these a little bit earlier, and it is a nice new feature of Vista that's a little broader than what was available in XP. XP had System Restore, but System Restore really only dealt with Windows system files itself. It doesn't do your user files. Shadow copies actually do create copies of all your user files, system files, lots of things. So it gives you the ability to roll back if there's a previous version. There are some limitations to it, some that are pretty large. One huge one is that Vista always creates shadow copies on every version of Vista you buy. And Vista has a lot of versions. But if you don't have a big enough version of Vista, you can't restore from it. So if you've got Home Premium or Vista Basic, shadow copies are basically useless to you. You can't access them. So, you know, thanks Microsoft, great job. But if you do have one of the options that are available, Vista Enterprise, Vista Ultimate, Vista Greatest Thing Since Earth, I don't know. You can restore, and it's quite easy. All you do is look at the file in the Explorer menu or folder, and right-click on it, choose the previous versions option, and see what's available. There is going to be a version, hopefully, that'll help you out. A new version is created when you install something that changes Windows system files. It creates a restore point. It does it like when you update drivers, and if it does it once a day, if you're like your computer's on, it creates a restore point at one point during the day. Now, it only creates restore points for any file that has changed since the last time a restore point was taken. So Elaine?
Does this apply to something like you're writing a document in Word and you go back and you change something? Is it making another version of it?
Yes.
That sounds like a huge waste of space.
It doesn't, yes and no. It does take up space, but it does not. So if you have a 500K document and you change 2 words in it, it doesn't create a 500K copy of that document. It creates a delta, which is only the difference between the two. So it doesn't take up as much space as you might think.
But if you're editing and improving your document, why do you want the old version?
Well, what if, you know, you're editing, improving your document and you accidentally delete the whole document or delete a paragraph or something, and you go back and, well, where was that? I know it was in my previous version. You can go to previous versions, restore that, pull it out. So that's why you may want to go back.
Would this be the same thing, like, let's say your computer caught a virus?
Uh-huh.
Would you restore back to a previous version of your
Yes. Yes. That's the other reason.
Although not too advisable, because usually when you get a virus, that's the first thing that gets infected is the system restore. So it'll put it back too.
So, yeah. Now, I must say, and this is kind of an allusion to the security question earlier about, you know, viruses and everything. I'm not a huge fan of antivirus software. Actually, I hate it. Truthfully, I don't remember the last time in the library we really got hit with a virus, which maybe we're weird, but it seems like there's an awful lot of publicity on what a huge problem viruses are, and we're not seeing the end result of that. Now, you may be different, and maybe we've got great users in the library, but we've been really lucky. And at home, I don't run antivirus software, and I don't run antivirus software on like my parents' machines and whatnot. I set them up otherwise and have trained them, and I don't have a problem, and I haven't had a lot of problems that antivirus software seems to bring along with it. But not that I'm advocating for not running antivirus software, just saying I detest it. So. Okay, shadow copies. I go ahead and generally would recommend turning these off on a public computer. You really don't have, for us anyway, we don't have a reason in public computing to roll back to a previous version. If the computer is hosed because the patron did something, I'm just going to rebuild it from an image. I'm not going to mess with trying to restore and figure out what went wrong. So I would turn off the system restore in that option. Now, system restore and shadow copies cannot be separated in Vista. So if you want to keep protecting your own personal files but turn off system restore, that's not an option for you. What you have to do, if you go into Control Panel, System Maintenance, System again, there is an option on the left-hand side called System Protection. That will bring up your System Restore menu, and you can just check which drives you want System Restore to be running on. And you just uncheck all drives and click OK. You're going to be disabling the System Restore service for everything. Auto runs. So one of the things that now I don't see a ton of viruses. Actually, I see very few. I see a lot of spyware and a lot of issues with spyware where those seem to be the ways that they're really slowing down our computer. And the auto run software is a good troubleshooting tool that allows you to see what is starting up on your computer. When you get a new computer from Dell or HP or something like that, it seems like there's about 5,000 things that start every time you turn on the machine. And you don't really know where they've come from or how they turn them on. The auto run software, which I've included on your disk, is a way that you can see that. It's a really cool little utility. You don't have to install it. You just unzip the folder that it's in, run the little file that says auto runs. It will bring up a window which tells you way more information about things running on your computer than you probably ever want to know. A really cool thing that you can do, though, all of those things have a little checkbox by them. You can just uncheck the ones that you don't want to run or want to try disabling. Click OK then, and then when you restart your computer, they're not going to run. They're prevented from running, and they're not going to give you a little nagware pop-up like will happen if you use the Windows utility msconfig. So it's pretty interesting. Now, one of the things in Vista that you can turn off in here that you can't really uninstall from Vista is like Windows Mail. We don't use Windows Mail anywhere in the library, which is Outlook Express in the XP world. You can turn off the things that make up Windows Mail from auto runs. You can't really uninstall it. It's so built into Vista.
So does auto runs tell you what the function of that file is?
No. The only way you can tell, which you can't really read probably up here, but Yeah.
So the Windows Mail, it isn't in the ad remove Windows
No.
list anymore?
Nope. Yeah, very nice. There's another way to get rid of it, but you can't uninstall it. You can turn off the services portion of it through auto runs, or you can create a custom install image that doesn't include it, which I'll cover in a little bit. The auto runs doesn't tell you what it is because files don't have things that designate that. There's things that are just pretty obvious. The file name will say like C Windows Mail da 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 da. So it's pretty obvious where it is. But whatever you do in auto runs is not permanent. If it breaks something, you run it again and just check it. So it's a kind of a trial and error process, seeing what you want to look at. Where I concentrate on if I'm in auto runs, and I don't know if you can see anything up there, probably not. The second tab is like a logon tab, and that's going to be everything that runs when you log on to your computer. And those are generally where the spyware things lodge themselves in. Their other place they kind of lodge in is, there's another one up here that's boot execute that you'll see some things in there once in a while. But mainly it's the logon tab. So that's kind of where I concentrate on. So another cool thing in Windows Vista that can be really helpful on troubleshooting a machine that seems to be slow or crashing a lot or what have you is a thing called the reliability monitor. It's built in with Vista, and it's a complete timeline of what has been happening in your system since it was built and since it was installed, I guess. So if you right-click on the computer in the Windows menu and select Manage, go to the Reliability and Performance, there's a Reliability Monitor thing under the Monitoring Tools folder. There's a little red X that indicates anytime there's a problem. If you click on those red X's, it'll highlight what the problem was, and you can track over time what your machine has been doing. So this is a great tool if you're working with, Dell for support or what have you. This little screenshot shows you an example of it. So you can see the red X there that occurred for me on, it looks like January 31st. And what it is, it just says the Application Explorer stopped working. Well, gee, great, it stopped working. That's not too helpful. But if I had a whole series of those where I could consistently see, like on the 31st of every month, this particular process stopped working, that'd give me a direction to start looking. And so it's a really nice kind of tool for you to look through and see what your computer does. And it covers hardware, Windows, software, applications, and then miscellaneous stuff. So that's kind of a track that you can go through. Now, another place you can speed up your computer is not something that's necessarily Vista specific, but it's PC specific. So the BIOS, which is what controls how your computer starts up, has a lot of options in there. And there's some things you can do to change and speed up your speed. One of the things is changing it to boot to the hard drive first. And this is something on a public computer I think everyone should have set, is booting hard drive first. That way users don't come in, stick a CD, and reboot your computer and run off their CD, which is what Matt's doing over in the other room today. So it kind of gives a little extra level of security. Plus, if your operating system doesn't look to your hard drive to boot first, it doesn't take that time to look to the hard drive. It can just go right on, or to the CD, sorry. It can go right to the hard drive and start booting. Some BIOSes also have a quick boot feature. You can go ahead and enable this. BIOSes also a lot of times will have a memory checks feature. I have not had a BIOS catch a memory failure in so many years that I see no reason for the thing to be checking it. Generally, a memory failure has been manifesting itself by the computer doing odd things later on after it's been running for 2 days, not the BIOS catching it. So, some features of Vista. Why do we want to go to Vista? What makes it, something I have to have as I'm running a Mac? So, the sidebar. It's kind of a cool feature of Vista. It's a little area of your desktop that you can add things to that you may run often, but that you don't necessarily want to have to start a whole application up for. For me, it's calculator. I use a calculator all the time to add, subtract, whatever. And I don't want to have to go start the calculator application or whatever. I just keep it running in a little sidebar type thing, where when I want to use it, it's there for me. And if I don't want to use it, it's not in my way. They do take a little memory, they do take a little space on your computer, but it's pretty darn minimal. The other thing I have it running is a little multimeter application, and that shows you how much CPU load and how much memory load your computer has. So you kind of have an idea just visually seeing it what your computer's doing. If most of the time it's at about 40% and then you're sitting there one day and the thing's going at 90% and you're not doing anything different, you know, wait a minute, something else is going on, and it gives you a little tickler to go look. Maybe you got some spyware, maybe someone else has accessed your computer, maybe your latest rip off your iPod caused a problem, who knows. So that's something that is kind of a good feature for me. And the other thing you can do with the sidebar, if it's something that it doesn't provide glanceable data, which for me would be the calculator, it's not something I'm just going to glance at, you can set it so it basically fades out and just as a kind of an outline on the background. Then when you put the mouse over it, it comes into focus and you can use it. That way it's kind of less obtrusive for you, I guess. So an example here, on this machine, which on my screen I can't get to the minimize, so maybe, let's see here. It's hidden up there. Well, I'll show you later. Trust me, it's there. Yeah, the Alt key won't bring up because that's one fault of the Mac keyboard. The Alt key doesn't map quite right. So, features. So, another thing that Vista has added for you is the right-click option that I mentioned earlier that you all should be using all the time because it provides you context-sensitive options. Is you can right-click on things. You can also shift right-click on things. It adds a few more features to the right-click menu. So it allows you to pin something to the start menu. If you right-click on something that you want to have added to your start menu or your Windows menu, if you shift right-click and select the pin to start menu, it does that for you automatically so that you don't have to go through a manual process to do that. You can also add it to quick launch, which is the down by the start menu, the little place where there's small icons. Shift right click gives you an add to quick launch area. So that it puts it in there, you don't have to do it a different way. And copy as path gives you the ability to copy the path location of something rather than that item itself. So if you want to, in a document, say C notepad exe or whatever, rather than typing that out, you could do the copy as path option. So if something's buried quite deep in your profile, it's kind of a neat way to do that. So more features. One thing that I really like, since we work in a networked environment, is the Manage Your Network Passwords option in the User Account Control Panel. Now, what this does is gives you an area, if you connect to multiple networks with different usernames and passwords, it gives you an area where you can manage those, delete them from your computer memory, change the password from them, things like that. I think that's a pretty cool feature that hasn't been there in the past. The Send To menu. Now, this is something that in the past, I don't necessarily like the options that Windows comes with. I want to add different things to the Send To menu. So it's a little different now in Vista. So in order to change and add something to the Send To menu, sending them to an area on a server, sending them to a different application or what have you, you have to copy a shortcut to that location, to this path that's in your handout, because you probably don't want to write it down from up here. The one note is where it says see user's username. Username's the username that you're using logged on to the computer. Open with Notepad. This is something else that I like to use because I like to just, a lot of times, if I don't know what a file is or something, I just want to open it up in a text editor. So in your CD, there's a little notepad.reg file. If you run that, it's going to put in your right-click menu right at the top an Open with Notepad option. so that you can, on any file, try to open with Notepad just to see what it is, which is kind of nice. So I went through a lot of things and manual ways to change stuff. You can ignore all that and run this little application in there called Vista for Experts if you want. It enables you in a little GUI to go through with little green checkboxes and turn things on and off, change how Vista runs. So if you want to have the menu always show up in Vista, you can just select the little checkbox by always show the menu of Windows Explorer, and that turns it on by default. It's good to know how it's doing it and good to know the manual way, but someone's written a little script to change it. Why not use it? Another thing that I always do, like when I do use Internet Explorer, that little search box by default in IE is set to, I think, MSN. I always want to go to Google because I find that it searches better. Well, this application will change that too and automatically change it for you. So if you're putting out new machines for staff, rather than manually changing a bunch of stuff, you can open this application, check the things you change, and be good to go. Virtual desktops. This is something more from the Linux world. Mac supports it in their newest operating system. Windows has never supported it by default. And what it is, it's a way to run several different desktops on your computer. So rather than having 2 monitors or 4 monitors or whatever, if you have set up virtual desktops, you can assign applications to different desktops on your computer. They don't, they're not stacked 10 windows deep. If you want to have Internet Explorer open on one and Firefox open on another, you can just switch back and forth between windows and not minimize and maximize. It's kind of a nice feature. I use it generally with just 2 desktops, but you can run 4 or 6 or whatever. And there's an application that I included on your CD there that's called Setup Virtual Desktops. You just run that, choose whatever desktops you want. It allows you to select hotkeys. And there's also, it puts a little icon down by your clock, which you can click on, brings up a little menu that you can then switch back and forth between desktops. And I can demo that in a bit as well. So Firefox, I also threw this in on your disk because IE does a good job. IE7 is the default browser with Internet Explorer, and I think it's a heck of a lot better than IE6. IE7 still supports ActiveX controls, which one of the things that I would like to see in technology is that in the web that they actually followed a little better standards. ActiveX is unfortunately only a Microsoft supported standard, and it does cause some issues, and there's a lot of great ways to get spyware on your computer through ActiveX. So I do tend to run Firefox and have less issues. So I put that on your computer as well, or disk as well. CCleaner. Oh, so long ago, this was called Crap Cleaner. They cleaned it up. And what it does, it's an application that will search over your hard drive, cleans out a lot of temporary files, cleans out discarded registry entries, just kind of makes the computer a little leaner and faster. And you'd be amazed, even on a brand new computer, brand new fresh install of Vista, it finds about 25 things in the registry that are orphans, that have no pointing to anywhere and are not doing you any good. So I really recommend running it. It's pretty simple. Shows the window here. If you start it up and it's got a little broom, you click on the Analyze button, and right on this machine, it found about 400 megs to clean up. And I've been running this machine for about a week and a half. So it really does clean up a lot of stuff that you think maybe you've taken care of otherwise, and does help the machines.
Best Buy, you spend $30 for the Geek Squad to do that.
To do the same thing, yeah. And this does, it does a really great job. I've never had an issue with it. Like I said, the registry, it also cleans up. You click on the Scan for Issues button and then Fix, and it asks you what you want to do. Generally, it deletes them for you. Under the Tools option, it allows you another way to go in and uninstall options from your computer. It does a little cleaner sweep of your recycle bin, some other little things. But its best claim to fame is the cleaner and the registry sweep. It can make a big difference on your machine, and it can help really cleaning out spyware as well. Okay, PS shutdown. This is something that's a little off topic from what we've been working in, but it's something that I included because we use it all the time in the library, and I think it's a great utility. It enables us in the library to shut down all of our computers at the same time across all the floors of the building and send a little message to every computer saying the library is closing in X minutes. The computer will be shut down, and then it just sits there and counts down. When the countdown runs up, the machine shuts off. You can't interrupt it. It has been the greatest thing for the public services folks. 2 o'clock in the morning when they have to kick people off the computers, you don't go around and kick them off anymore. A script runs and it kicks them off. Downside, we change our hours, systems forgets to change the script, and at 6 p.m. we shut down the computers when they are still working. That does happen, but it is great. The only thing, the person running the shutdown utility has to have an admin account on the computers that are being shut down. So that's a little snag that you have to be aware of. And pretty simple command syntax. The command -F, force the applications to quit. -M, the message you want to give to the user. -K, shut the computer off. Don't just let it reboot or go into Neverland. And then the -T, the time in seconds that you actually want the shutdown to occur, and the computer name. So it just goes through, and for ours, we've got a couple scripts that run and shut down the couple hundred machines across the building. They all go down, and then the staff doesn't have to deal with it. Another great little free app is called Drive Image XML. How many of you use something like Norton Ghost or similar to handle your machines? A couple of you in here? Drive Image XML is a free way to do the same thing. It will take and create an image of your computer, let you store it, and let you restore it to that computer or multiple machines. It's not as nice as Ghost. You can't restore across the network. You can't do things like that. But it's a simple free application that allows you to take a snapshot of a machine. If you're going to do something on a personal computer, make a big change, you could take a snapshot image of it with this application, and then you make your change and find, oh geez, it just hosed it. You can just restore the image and you're good to go. It's pretty slick and a good price. So this is a little screenshot of what it is and how you go about doing it, backing up, restoring, drive to drive, etc. Pretty self-explanatory to click through. I'm not going to go through the whole process here, but just be aware that there's alternatives out there. So V-Lite. Now, you asked earlier about being able to uninstall Outlook Express. You can't, but you can create a custom install disk of Vista that doesn't include Windows Mail. And to do that, you can run this thing called V-Lite. So you stick your Vista install disk in your computer. You can run V-Lite, and it allows you to select a whole bunch of features from Vista that you do or don't want to install by default. It creates a custom install image, which then you burn to disk and use that to install your other computers from. Yeah, very similar. I didn't include this because the license expressly says it's free and open, but you can't distribute it except from his site. And so I just have a link available in your handout to his site that allow you to do this. And it is beta software. I note in there it can be a little buggy. I've not had an issue with it with bugs, but it's beta. You never know. So it's something to think about. Virtual PC. So this is provided by free by Microsoft. And if you're running Vista, but you really want to run XP still, well, you can install a virtual Windows computer on your computer using Virtual PC. So it's a way you can also test out maybe a new version of Windows or an old version of Windows and see comparisons or change things by running Virtual PC. Or you could run 2 copies of Vista if you really love it. So, and Virtual PC is essentially what I'm running here to give this presentation too. Also included a thing called the GIMP. I do not do Photoshop pretty much ever, but I often want to make some sort of photo manipulation. Windows includes Windows Photo Editor, which is pretty pathetic. It has improved in Vista, but it's still pretty limited. On your disk, I put in a copy of the GIMP, which is New Image Manipulation Program, and it does a pretty good job. I can use it and do a lot of things that you can do in Photoshop, but you're going to pay a lot more to do, and this is free. And it's pretty easy to use, I think. It does take a fair amount of system resources, but any big photo image editor does. So it's kind of a great way to play with your images and do some more advanced things than you may get with a camera, when you buy a digital camera, or the more advanced things than you can with Photo Editor. Yeah?
Will it work with XP?
Yep. Yeah, it'll work with anything. Well, it was originally built on Linux, but it's ported to XP, ported to Vista, you can run on Mac, so. And some resources for you. tweakvista.com and extremetech.com. Both of those can be useful for kind of looking through. If you're having a problem with a Vista install, you can check out these sites and see what's there. Plus the files that we included on the CD from the conference. And that's all I've got for you. Thank you.